All right, welcome to Mr. Holloway's Foundational Python Skills series. In this video, we're going to talk about classes. But before we get started, if you like the video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and make a comment if you have one. Class is now in session. Let's get started. Okay, classes are an important topic in programming. They're available in many languages. Many object-oriented languages, which we're going to talk about in a second. But just to give you a general idea of what a class is, I want you to think about a class. And as you see here on the left, you see a blueprint to make a house. And with this blueprint, you can actually make many different houses. So you can have houses that are two-story, that are one-story. You can have many different features, but they all come from this blueprint. And that's kind of the general idea of what a class is. So think of a class as a blueprint. Now, let's look at how this looks in reality. So object-oriented programming is a concept, again, that's in many different languages. Python is considered an object-oriented programming language. And the way it works is that if you look at this example, this circle is going to represent a class. And think of it again as a blueprint. And within that class, it has something called an attribute, it has methods, and it has a constructor. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. And with this blueprint, you can make objects. We also call them instances. And notice that we all have circles. Right, they're all circles, but they have different attributes. So this one is red with a green border. This one is yellow with a thicker blue border, and this one is a lighter blue with a white border. And that's just the general idea of how this how object-oriented programming works. You have a class and you have objects. So you can create these objects. Again, we can also call them instances. But that's the general idea of object-oriented programming. Now, let's talk about what does this look like in code. All right, I'm going to switch over into our coding environment, into Replit, and we're going to make a class. Now, the way you make a class in Replit is you use the class keyword, and we're going to create a class called car. All right, now within this class, I'm going to bring in some of my notes here. So I'm just going to paste in what we call a constructor, and I'll explain this in a second. But before we do that, I just want to make sure that all of my indents are okay. And so I'm just going to move everything back. I'm going to indent. Okay, so that looks good. And then let me add this attribute. Okay, so this def, notice that this is looks like a function, but it's actually a special function in Python, and it's called the init function, and it's considered a constructor. I'm going to talk about a constructor in 1 second. Now, the only other thing I want to add to this class is I'm going to bring in a what's called a method. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to bring this in. So paste this in, and I'm going to just bring everything back over, and then we'll do our let me see, our returned. Okay, so all right, so we have our tabs. So this is basically a class, and we're going to look at how we can do certain things with this. Now, let me explain this. So the self basically is a requirement in a constructor, and it basically says that, hey, I'm a constructor. I need to initiate all of these attributes. So you have brand, model, year, and wheels. So this is the car class, and we're going to add all of these attributes. So they're simply variables, but they belong to the class. Specifically, they belong to the instance, which we're going to talk about in 1 second. Okay, so notice that I have self.brand, self.model. So this is basically going to, whenever we make an object, these are going to be initiated initially. Now this is just a simple method, and this method, notice it has self, and then when we add when we return whenever we call this method, it's going to return the year, the brand, the model, and the wheels. All right, so that is the class. Let's make a new object. So let me tell you where we are right now in the process. So if I go back here, we are here. So we're in the blueprint phase. Okay, so now we're going to move down to the object phase. Okay, so we're going to create an object. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a variable. Okay, so I'm just going to call it my car, and this is where we're going to create the new instance. So the way we do it is we call we name the class, and then if you notice here, to create a new car, we actually have to put a brand, a model, a year, and the number of wheels. So let's do that. So I'm going to say this is going to be a Toyota, and this will be let's make it a Corolla, and we'll make it a 2024 model, and we're going to add the number of wheels is going to be 4. Okay, Toyota. Okay, so this again matches. So these arguments match the parameters here in the init function. Okay, so this is going to allow us to create the new car. So again, this line of code is equivalent to creating new objects or new instances. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and print, and what we're going to do is we're going to get the value. We're going to go ahead and get the value of this new object. So what we can do is we could say print, and the way we do it is I'm going to call this method, and it's going to return this back to me. Okay, so let's just say we'll say car, and then we'll say my car dot, and notice when I do the dot, now I have access to the method. So I'm going to say display info, and that should be it. Okay, so when we run it, we're going to get the car. Let me fix a couple things here. All right, so let's run it again. And so we run it, we'll get car. And so basically we just created another object, one object. Now let's create another object. So I'm going to just call it my car 2. And we're going to set it, we're going to create the new object, and we're going to say car. We'll call it a Ford. And we'll call it a Ford. I don't know any Fords. We'll just call it a Baba Ruski. That's a new model. You guys don't know about that one. And we'll call it a 2024. And let's make this one have 8 wheels. Okay. So this is a Ford Babaruski. It's 2024 model, and it has 8 wheels. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing now. So let me just copy this, and I'm going to say car 2, and now I'm going to say, now I'm calling the method on car 2. So these are 2 separate objects. So when we call this, we will see that we now have a different object. So these are 2 different objects. Again, when we come back here, we have the blueprint, and these are 2 different objects. These are this is where we are here. So we've created different objects. And so that's basically how object-oriented programming works. So in review, the constructor basically tells us how we can make a new car. We have attributes. So attributes are kind of like variables, but they belong to this specific instance, which I'm going to touch on in a second. And because if you notice here, we have different values for the arguments that we put in. And so these attributes belong to this instance. So this is instance 1, this is instance 2, and we can also call it an object. Okay, and basically, creating classes is a great way to organize your code. And so let's talk about that a little bit more. But before we move on, I want to do something different. this is good that we created a class, but what I want to do is I actually want to, I'm going to cut this away. And what I want to do is I want to put it in a separate file, because that's the proper way of creating classes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to new file, and I'm going to say car.py. And I'm going to put the code here. So I'm just going to take exactly what we did here, and I'm just going to put it in this car.py file. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take out this, because we don't need this code here. This is doesn't have anything to do specifically with the class. This is just more so creating the object. And so I'm going to take that out, and we'll get back to that in a second. So what we'll do is let's go ahead and paste it here. All right. Now notice I get some errors. If I try to run it, let's try to run this, and we're going to get an error. And it says name error, car is not defined. Do you mean CHR? Okay. So the way we fix this is before we can access the code here, okay, we have to import it. So what we need to do is we're going to write a simple import statement, and then it's kind of like having a key where we can actually open the door and we have access to the all of the methods inside of here, all of the attributes, any kind of class variables or anything like that. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say from car import car. All right, and that should get rid of all of the errors. So what we're saying is from this car file, we want you to import the car class. So we're doing the exact same thing we did before, but now we have our code separated. And so now if I run it, we get the exact same thing we did before. Okay, so we have the two objects, but now our code is separated. And so imagine if you have a big project where you have cars and you have motorcycles and you have whatever, right? This is a great way to have to organize your code so that you don't have one huge file of code, where it's 1,000 lines or whatever. This you can actually isolate and put the code and match code where it's most appropriate. All right, now let's talk about the difference. Let's come back to this. Actually, we'll come back here. So if we look at the difference, we have a blueprint. Again, this is the master blueprint. These are the houses. Notice that the houses are different, and that's the general idea. Now, some things belong to the blueprint or the class, and some things belong to the instance. So let's look at how that. Let's see how that looks. So what I want to do is, to demonstrate that, I'm going to create just a class, what we call a class variable, and I'm going to name this thing wheel, and I'm going to set it to 2. Okay, actually we'll say wheels. Okay, so these two variables are different. So this actually belongs to the class. This belongs to the object, so the copy of the class. Okay, so watch this. Let's just focus on this one for now. I'm going to go ahead and comment that out. And so what I want to do is I actually want to call the class. Actually, no. Let me do this too. All right. So what I want to do is show you the difference of accessing I take that back. I'm going to have to keep that available. Okay. So what I want to do is we have one object. So let's go ahead and run it now. So we run it. We have our object. So we have one object. So what I want to do is I want to access the wheel. So let's go the wheel instance variable. So I want to say car, and then I'm going to access my car dot. And the dot operator again is like a key. So I'm going to say wheels. All right. So actually it should be my underscore car. Okay. So in this case, let's take a look. So we have an object. We've created the object, and the object has 4 wheels. If we look here, we have a class variable that has 2. And so again, this belongs to the class. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. Uh-oh, we got an error. Okay, so I need to fix that. Let's I'm just going to go ahead and... The reason why we get this error is because we can't put strings and ints together, concatenate strings and ints. So I'm just going to fix this by... There's several ways I can do it, but I'm just going to put a comma here, and then it should convert it. I think we should be okay there. And okay, so it doesn't complain. So notice we have the wheels are 4. Actually, let me back up. So this actually belongs to, so this is not the wheel we're referring to. We're actually referring to the object because I called it on the object. Now, we're going to call the class variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say car class, and I'm going to change this to instance. All right, so sorry about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say car dot wheels. Okay, notice that these two are called differently. So watch, let's go ahead and run it. And notice now we have 2 values. So we have wheels, which is equal to 2, and we have my car dot wheels, which is equal to 4. So let's look and see why that is. The first obvious reason is because for our car instance, so my car, which is here, we added 4 wheels. So we created the copy or the instance with 4 wheels. That is an instance. That is a copy. Now, if we go back to the class, so we say cars.wheels, okay, we get 2. And the reason why is because this is a class variable. It belongs to the class. It does not belong to the instance. So what we could do is, and it's going to be consistent all throughout the whole class. So no matter how many objects we create, if we access the class, we're going to access this wheels here. So it will be these wheels or this wheels. So that is just a general idea, and let me just put this here. So this is a class variable, okay, and then these are attributes, and this is a method. Now we can put class methods. We could do all sorts of things here. Classes have their own code. We can create a number of different things. But to review, a class is a blueprint, and we can create various things with that. So of that same class. So for example, and this is the best example I could think of, is that we have a class here of a circle, and with that blueprint we can put in attributes, methods, and a constructor, and we can create various circles. Now coming back here, the constructor is simply an initiator. It tells you how to make a class. We have class variables, and then we have our methods here. And let me just do one other thing. I did talk about how to make a class let me just go ahead and do these. Okay, so the constructor tells you how to make a class. So let me show you. So one of the things is pretty simple. So if I were to do this, and let's say I left out let me do this one too. So let's just focus on this one instance. So let's say I left out an argument here, and I were to run this. Okay, it's going to tell me missing one required positional argument, wheels. So what we've done is we've added 3 arguments, but in the constructor tells us we need to add a brand, a model, a year, and wheels. So that's 4 arguments. We added 3 here, and so we can fix that here by just adding a 4th argument. So that's how we can look at code, specifically a class, and know how to make it. And so that's pretty much it. All right, so if you liked the video, Please give it a like, please subscribe, and leave a comment. And if you have any questions, leave it in the comments. And class is now dismissed.